the U.S. jobs report. It's out, and the news is definitely discouraging. We've got Neal Lipschutz here from Dow Jones Newswires with all the details. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So I understand not a lot of good news here, and you say particularly it's about the participation rate. What's going on there?
Yeah, that's it's sort of a geeky number, if you will, and it's beyond the headline numbers of the unemployment rate and how many jobs were actually created. But there is an item called the labor force participation rate, and it simply means how many adults are either employed or actively looking for work. And today's number was the lowest since September 1981. It was 63.5%.
Wow. And what does that mean for the economy at large and where things could be going?
Yeah, my view is that it's more important about the trend, and the trend has been down for some time. And what it implies to me is more than 1 month's data, a long-term problem for the economy. You know, more people who have literally dropped out of the jobs market, and that's bad news for them economically, often psychologically, bad news for their families, and bad news for the greater economy, who loses those people's productivity and loses their ability really to be affluent consumers.
And then you say that men in particular, the participation rate is getting lower?
Yes, men in particular, men went to just below 70% in this latest month, August, and that is the lowest level of men's participation in the workforce since the Labor Department has kept records, and that's 1948.
Wow. And this is any of this due to retirement, or this is really that people have given up?
I mean, I think that's right. That's a very good point. Retirement is definitely part of it. There's no doubt, and one can argue with the aging of the population and people living longer that there's going to be more people not in the labor force than perhaps there used to be in earlier years. But still, some part of this has got to be, some significant part of it, has most likely going to be people who have looked for work, have been laid off, and just at some point get discouraged and are no longer in the workforce. And that's the real negative takeaway.
And now, of course, there's been a lot of talk about this morning already, about these numbers in relation to the president's speech last night. What do you think this is going to have in terms of an impact during this election season? You know,
it's a great question. Certainly both sides will seize on today's data, in my mind, and try to make their positive points. I guess from the Democratic point of view, you can say, listen, the unemployment rate based on the so-called household survey actually still went down. It's 8.1%. It was 8.3%. Yes, there were fewer jobs than some people expected created, but there were 96,000 new jobs created. And I would imagine on the Republican side, the counter-argument would be 96,000 jobs in a month is not enough to really get the economy humming on its own, or to bring down significantly an unemployment rate that, you know, most everyone would say is unacceptably high.
And then what would it take to reverse this participation trend?
You know, I think over time it's going to take just a sort of a steady increase in opportunities, a steady increase, frankly, in sort of, I would imagine, job training or other kinds of educational activities from some of these people who may be in industries that will never grow as much again. I mean, one of the big changes that has happened since the burst in the housing bubble is that there are just many, many fewer people, many of them men, employed in the construction industry. And even as housing perhaps rebounds a little bit, it's unlikely it'll get back to the to the bubble era anytime soon. And those folks will have to find work in other areas, a lot of them.